So, how many of you guys have envisioned on finding a treasure? Not just any treasure full of gold and legendary weapons. I mean like a really, really sacred treasure that is like impossible to find. Oh, I guess we reached that hour into the podcast spheres. Am I right? Hey guys, what's going on? Lucky Cheese 7 is back again after, what's it been now, 5 years since the last One Piece podcast? It's been forever. And I remember when Whole Cake Island finished, I said, the next One Piece podcast we'll probably do is when the Wano arc ends. Now, Wano's been done for a bit of time. Though, if you've been on my end of things, I've just been super preoccupied with stuff. And stuff had to be pushed back, like this. However, I am still excited to finally talk about this arc. And obviously, y'all know the drill at this point. Lucky T does not do podcasts by himself. Why? Because you know how dull it would be just be having one person over here? So I roped in 2 members from the Manga pilots. Yeah, let's go with that.
Hello everyone! BlueStarSaber here, once again to do another One Piece stream on Lucky Cheese channel.
And he is also the cursed child, so who would you go with that?
You bring this up every time. Every time you have to bring this up.
And Mr. Wikipedia, and Lemon Star Saber.
With all the dang nicknames.
Oh, I'm sure we can come up with something else. Isn't that right, Steve?
Yeah, we will. Eventually.
Oh, boy.
But yeah, once again, lkmnjh, also known as Steve here. Not the second co-hostess with the co-mostess this time around. But certainly, yeah, it's been a minute since we've done a One Piece podcast.
I think this is probably the first time you've joined a One Piece podcast, right?
No, I think I was there for Whole Cake Island. Or,
I know 4 Life was there.
Yeah, 4 Life was there. I know that.
Nah. Yeah, then probably, this is my first time doing something One Piece related. I know I've definitely talked to you about Whole Cake Island, though.
Mm-hmm.
Outside of Skype and Discord and all that.
Right. I think we were trying to get you on for that one at the time, but I think you were just preoccupied with stuff too.
I believe you've done at least 1 or 2 at least 1 or 2 attempted streams for me of One Piece, but I lost the recording for one, and I've had to put the other one on private because there was some personal information I accidentally shared on the stream.
Okay.
But, like I said, it's been 5 years since the last One Piece podcast, so a lot's happened in the manga. Especially Reverie, which I think is probably a good place to start. Now, why Reverie? Well, one, it was only 5 chapters, I think?
That's 6 chapters. So, let's see, I believe one of Oda's editors didn't even really call it necessarily an arc, though at the very least it should be considered a mini arc since there have been arcs just as long as that one.
Yeah. Now, I'm not going to go super in-depth with the Reverie arc, but I will say, with what was in that arc, I actually really liked it.
Yeah. I think they've now changed the name of it to the Levelly arc or something like that. They've changed the Reverie to Levelly. I'm not sure.
That's interesting.
Well,
I was going to say, because I know the official translation still call it Reverie, so...
Yeah. It's Lovely, I think it's just the term coined by the romatization of the name.
Yeah.
And, fans just tend to stick with... Well, yeah, they just tend to stick with the Japanese pronunciations more than the official English translations.
Fair enough.
Although then again, this Well, we'll get into this when we discuss Wano in depth.
Mm-hmm.
But there is a point where we thought what one name actually was ended up being a totally different name.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, so 6 chapters. Yeah. I mean, I consider it a prelude to Wano, if anything. Not necessarily an entirely separate arc. But, you know, what are you going to do?
It's more of an interlude than anything.
It's sort of in between Whole Cake and Wano. In some ways, you could argue it's like an epilogue to Whole Cake, or like a prologue to Wano.
Like, if this was, you know, if these 6 chapters were more like Long Ringland, and that was like 24 chapters, I think, maybe 30. If then I would consider it an entirely separate arc altogether. But as it is, me personally, I don't consider it a separate arc from Wano. It's just a prelude to Wano.
Yeah.
But I digress. So yeah,
I have seen some debates on it. So go on.
So yeah, the Reverie arc. Well, I'll say this: first time in a long time that we've seen Cobra.
I know, right?
Well, it's the first time we saw him since the beginning, some point towards the end of the Zoro arc, as that was the last time we saw him, and we learned his intentions to go to Reverie that year to try and finally ask about the Void Century, ever since getting it from Robin.
Yeah, now how long did Zoark take again?
20, that was like 20 or so chapters, I believe.
Yep.
23. That is something like
Arguably, it's besides, I guess you could say Reverie and the Straw Hats Reunion arc, it's the shortest arc in the time skip.
Yep.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think in many ways that arc, if you compare like the New World Saga from like at least Punk has it to Wano, it's like that arc was kind of like that one chapter where you had that dude in the chest kind of thing, learning a bit more about the Grand Line and all that stuff.
Yeah.
We see a sort of like interlude break before the Action Mega arc, and in many ways you could argue this is sort of similar. But yeah, in many ways, I think the biggest hype about the Reverie, of course, was the fact that it was the gathering of 50 kings. In this way, you could say it's like the One Piece equivalent of having like the 5 Kage summit, or like a summit of leaders and all that stuff, depending on whichever fantasy story manga you have and all that stuff.
I got a hot take I'm going to say here that's going to piss some people off. I actually think this supersedes the 5 Kage summit.
Yeah, I think most people, minus perhaps maybe diehard Naruto fans, would probably agree with you on that, Lucky Chi.
I don't know. 5 Kage Summit ended with Sasuke versus Danzo. What this ended with was, let's see what the Straw Hats are doing now.
It was kind of
abrupt.
It was interesting because, like, I remember reading it, then I was doing a few live reactions on it at the time. And then I had to leave for a trip. So when I came back, I was like, wait, we're finished? We're still going on with this.
Yep. That's not to say nothing important happens.
No.
I'd say the disillusion of the 7 warlords is a pretty damn big event there. Because now you got the Marines hunting down Boogie the Clown, who only wanted a peaceful life.
Yeah,
that's ironic, isn't it?
And he thought he was going to get that by being a warlord.
Yeah.
And instead, now he's on the run again.
Yeah. But lucky for him, he has, I believe, what King of Lightning describes as the clown charisma.
Yeah.
But yeah. Now, granted, we don't really learn about the warlords disbanding until, like, the in-break team between Act 1 and Act 2 of Wano kind of thing. But yeah. But I think, but you pretty much when you saw Fujitora there talking to, like, the last admiral we've yet to see, you just knew that the warlords were going to be disbanded after this arc.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we knew that something was going to happen to the warlords after Punk Hazard.
Oh, yeah.
Because after what Doflamingo did, after what Trafalgar did, and after what Blackbeard did...
And Crocodile.
There's just like, there was no way that they were gonna, as a group, there was no way they were gonna continue on.
No. Not to mention, Oda, of course, introduced a character that was hell-bent on disbanding them.
Yes.
And arguably the main reason why he probably joined the Marines in the first place.
Yep.
But yeah, but I think the most exciting thing about this arc, I think, for everyone, is the fact that you got all these sort of friends and allies of the Straw Hats from all various different islands and sagas throughout the series coming together for the first time, because this is just not something we've seen. Former enemies of the Straw Hats get together due to like Imperial Down and Marineford with like Buggy and Baroque works, but we never got like that with allies before of the Straw Hats.
No, like, dude, my childhood came rushing back to me as soon as I saw Karu, Vivi, and Cobra. I was like, God damn.
Yeah. I mean, we got some expected interactions, such as the three, Vivi, Shirahoshi, and Rebecca. Yeah, meeting each other. But we also kind of got, like, some interactions I don't think we expected. Particularly, Kobe interacting with Rebecca and Leo. Granted, as soon as Wappa was revealed to be a king again, we were expecting interaction with that. But I think we didn't really expect to see Rob Lucci and Kaku interact with all the princesses either.
Yeah, that was kind of unexpected.
But yeah. But anyways, the stuff with Reverie was not really to tie into Wano, even though the kings and queens of that meeting clearly talked about it, but at least with the way they were describing about how chaotic Luffy was, it was all more of just set up with the arc that follows afterwards with it.
Yeah, like, I'll say this, like, if you were asking me at the time what I would rank Reverie, I would say it's like, it's like good plus, maybe kind of great. It could have been a lot better, but I feel like with the stuff we're getting now, I think it definitely, like, elevated.
Yeah. I suppose maybe this is why Oda partly didn't really cut off Reverie from the way he did, because originally I heard that Reverie was supposed to be like a 10 or 15 chapter arc, but then they went to, I heard somewhere, I think King of Lightning said in the video that one of the editors said that. I'm not sure if that is true or not. I think it might have turned out to be false, but it seems like that was probably the initial intention, but I think if that was the initial intention, I think I'll just decide that, you know what, some of the stuff I want to reveal much later. Which, arguably, I think probably worked out better for the story, even if we got, like, a few spoilers about certain things.
Yeah.
Besides building up to the next arc, in many ways, this arc also added a lot of mysteries for certain characters, like, but see, this is probably one meeting that we did not really expect to happen, is Shanks meeting with the Five Elders.
Dude, I lost my shit when I saw that. I was like, oh.
Yeah, and there were so many theories as a result afterwards.
Including the one where, people postulated every time Shanks shows up, it's to shake up the story.
Right.
Yeah. But I think this arc also did quite a lot to the Revolutionary Army's organization as a whole, as well as the character Sabo, where we finally got sort of like the introduction of like the top officers. Let's see. Which I definitely say, I think there was, granted, I do recall there apparently was some initial disappointed with some of the more goofier designs of some of the members. But I think like the Giant and maybe the Minx. But I do know that for many people, Bello Betty stood out as like probably a fan favorite. As well, I think there was some hype about Karu, I think, or Karu was it, or
Karu, yeah.
Karu, the crow, the crow-looking themed one, because I think there was just like, what was his powers at the time? So I think there was that, but I think it's also like we finally end up learning a bit more about the Revolutionary Army's actual goal, and it's actually kind of interesting, where there was supposed to be like, they're not. Let's see, their goal is not to completely destroy the world government, but rather eliminate those at the top of it, the celestial dragons.
Mm-hmm.
And we end up learning that the 5 elders are actually, in fact, celestial dragons as well. They're just like the highest authority. Or at least they were perceived as such. But I suppose that's probably the other thing about this arc that, let's see, the Reverie sort of introduced. Because I think before this arc, I think there's a general consensus among the fandom that either Akainu or Blackbeard would be the final antagonist, with more people going towards Blackbeard in the end. But
I was more so on the Akainu team. I just felt like there was a lot there to Akainu that probably warrants him as the...
Yeah.
But, you know.
But I definitely say it's because, well, he's a part of the Marines and World Government, which is clearly a bigger organization with Blackbeard, which, to be fair, Blackbeard is probably going to be the final pirate antagonist. I think that's clear. Yeah. But it's like... the world government as a giant organization feels like would be like the greater evil and all that stuff. But I think the biggest problem was that it never had like a center figure with it. But this arc, but the Reverie sort of introduced that figure at long last. That there was actually a mastermind behind the entire organization, a secret dictator, if you will, with like the introduction of Emu.
No, and like unlike other series and stories we've read, this one fits perfectly, I would say.
I think it was just like, let's see, this was arguably the right time to introduce a bad guy like this. Mm-hmm. Because, let's see, I know some people compared it as like, oh, this feels like a last-minute bad guy, but remember, let's see, Reverie and Wano is not the final arc of One Piece.
No, it's not.
Arguably, it's the finale of, like, the plot, the long plot thread that's been added for multiple sagas throughout the New World, arguably.
I mean, you can kind of say that this is like this would technically be like the penultimate saga, if you will.
It's like, this is like the big major saga first before the final saga, but yeah. But they've just introduced like this one bad guy that is, let's see, just towards the end, I feel like, okay, we all thought that these were the big bads, but no. This is the ultimate evil, arguably. And I think it was probably the, let's see, for the benefit, because while all the stuff going on with Wano was going on, this allowed sort of build up and hype and discussion around this mysterious person and just like what kind of villain, or if he's powerful indeed or not. Yeah. But I think in many ways it sort of fits, because I think we've gone deeper into like the New World and learning about stuff like the Will of D, with the connection with the Celestial Dragons and the Dawn. We've kind of got like an idea that Luffy, or like the pirate, whoever becomes Pirate King, and I think even at the end of Marineford, like whoever's going to become Pirate King is going to have this major fight that changes the world, and we now know like who that enemy is going to be in the end. Let's see. So yeah, I think that works there. And I think the other thing that this arc has benefited is arguably setting up Sabo as a much different character from Ace, I think.
Yeah, no, because as soon as... I think it happens in... Not Reverie, but I know it happens in Wano, eventually. But, like, when a certain thing happens to Sabo, I was like, god damn it, don't tell me.
But yeah... But I think the biggest worry I think everyone had about Sabo being just Ace 2.0, where he gets captured and Luffy does another Marineford. But I think if there's going to be like another Marineford style battle, it's clearly not going to be about rescuing Sabo. There might be another character, but
I mean, would Oda do that though? I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if he does, but you know.
Well, I think that many people have noticed the parallel connections with like, let's see, the Yonko sagas or New World saga bits with some of the earlier arcs. I think
the most obvious one you can compare it to is Alabasta and Dressrosa.
Yeah, well, I think, let's see, apparently because New World's the 4 Emperors were always going to be like the main objective
Yeah, that was always the plan. Was
in fact, he was initially going to. Let's see, in his 5-year plans, he was initially going to do, like the 4 emperors afterwards. But he introduced like the 7 warlords, and that arguably is what prolonged the story. But yeah, but
it kind of works though.
Yeah, yeah. But apparently, you can kind of see this. Guys, I think Mr. Moji. If you see a video from a YouTuber called Mr. Moji, I'm not sure if you heard of him. I think he's done some interesting connections with like the major arcs in the New World compared to like the ones in East Blue, where Punk Hazard, you're dealing with a clown-themed villain, and Luffy teaming up with an alliance that would eventually result in eliminating a big bad in that area. Because, when Nami first joined, it was more of like a temporary alliance with Luffy. And eventually led, of course, to Arlong, but yeah. But with Law, it's like to Kaido. Dressrosa is sort of like, you have a villain that's pretending to be someone that he's not, at least to like the members of the public there, and you get sort of like a particular big moment of Usopp there with like let's see, no, this time Usopp was just breaking down the lies of Doflamingo with like taking out Sugar, if you will. Let's see, Zoro being the sort of like treasure chest like sort of bit there. Well, also perhaps building a few things up with Whole Cake being similar to like Baratie because of its a Sanji focused arc, if you will. Mm-hmm. And Wano sort of like the big combination of, let's see, sort of like Airlong Park, where most of the Straw Hats get a fight and liberate this island from a Wetsy pirate tyrant, if you will. But yeah, so I think that's what I've seen, at least the comparisons there, at the very least. Whether or not you truly believe that, but it does feel like there are some connections to that, at least, or at least some inspiration for that. But yeah,
I mean, in the great words of George Lucas, it's poetry. It rhymes.
Yeah, in terms of like, I'd say for me, the best bit for me was of course just the princesses meeting each other. But yeah,
that was a highlight for me too.
But yeah, but I think the other thing that was interesting to note is arguably the first chapter of the arc, where Luffy finds out he is the unofficial 5th Emperor.
That was a big deal.
In many ways, I remember that chapter being out, let's see, in the time in the Infinity War movie was coming out. Everyone's like, there were like all these jokes about everyone outside of manga anime fans going like, Infinity Saga, major thing, but then for like anime and manga community, it's like, Luffy's an emperor, or is he not an emperor? It depends on whether or not you, how you interpret it. Yeah. Heck, I think I even saw a bit of a debate on the wiki whether or not to add Luffy to the emperors or not.
Well, this arc definitely changed that.
Well, yes. At the end of Wano, it definitely changes that, but yeah. But I suppose you should probably want to go into Wano now, or...
Yeah. Although, I'm going to open it up with a question, and we won't answer it until we finish talking about Wano. So, if y'all remember, in the Whole Cake Island podcast, Oda specifically said that Wano was gonna make Marineford look like child's play. And I was like, that's a pretty bold statement to say. Now, does he succeed? Well, we'll get into that towards the end. But I want to leave that as like an opening hook for the podcast.
Alright, so let's see here. How do you go in depth yet not go in depth of 4 years worth of storytelling?
Right?
Let's see. The most simplest explanation we can get about Wano is that it is yet another instance of Luffy going to an island, discovering that the inhabitants are being oppressed, not initially caring, but only caring after reasons. And in this case, it's because they're not getting enough food.
Yep.
And then he throws himself into well, shall we say, yeah. A giant dragon, amongst other things. And eventually he discovers that the people he's been traveling with are actually kind of sort of royalty. again.
Now, arguably, for once, it was different than just the standard princess. Instead, you had like...
Oh no, yes, of course. This time it's the son of Goemon Ishikawa. No, I'm sorry, Odin. I mean, come on, guys. This guy, Odin is literally an XP of Goemon Ishikawa. He even dresses like him too. Oh, and spoiler alert: he dies because he's boiled in oil, just like Goemon Ishikawa.
Yep.
But pretty much Wano is pretty much the gritty Oda just doing more of a gritty an arc, mainly based on his country, Japan, pretty much.
Yep.
As pretty much every other arc is just, since it's being a theme of pirates, pirates aren't really, I guess, associated too much with, I guess, Japan culture, I guess. I think they might have had pirates at one point, maybe, but but different than the standard pirates we all know.
Right. Also, you thought we were done with Smile back in Dressrosa? Nope. As it turns out, some of those fruits get rejected. And where did those rejected fruits end up? Well, apparently here. Yeah.
And it's kind of interesting just to learn just how long the Smile plotline has gone on for. I mean, we got a hint about Smiles after Luffy punched the World Noble and all that stuff, and Doflamingo was talking to the slave auction owner Disco about it. I think
But it's here that we kind of learn the horrifying truth, as if it wasn't already horrifying enough.
Yeah, I mean
that you can artificially create devil fruits.
Yeah, it's like I think that was the whole hype about Wano, is the fact that you've got this pirate crew that can there's at least 500 people that can turn into beasts.
Yep, one of them's named Batman.
Dude, I cracked up when I saw it. I was like, there is some copyright infringement.
Yeah. I do think it's...
And no, people, it's not that he's an XP of Batman. He's literally Batman.
Yeah, literally.
So I will admit, they ended up being a bit more funnier and goofier than I think many people expected them to when they were first mentioned, because, you know, with the Chilerettes, always kind of makes them look a bit more badass and scary, but then you find out they're a bit more goofier than you realize. But I do kind of like how they're not, since they're artificial, they're not full-on beasts. They have just, like, animals coming out, random parts coming out of random parts of their bodies, if you will.
Yeah.
I just found it very creative. I remember, and it's led to some funny moments, particularly when you have, like, Hamlet, a guy who's just got literally just a human figure with a giraffe's this body minus the head sticking out of his back, and it's like, and then he gets beaten up by the Straw Hat saying, "Don't come out in a weird way."
Also, we've got time travel in this arc. Yes, folks, there is a time fruit.
Dude, as soon as I saw that, I was like, this can go south real fast.
So did I. But thankfully, Oda just barely toes the line by saying, okay, it can only send people forward in time. That's it.
Yeah.
They can't go back. They can't... they just stay there.
Right. Yeah. And interestingly, it's the last sort of plot twist you have with Momonosuke, because, you know, when we first met him, we just thought it was Kimino's son, but he's actually the son of the former daimyo of Kiri, and arguably should have been the rightful shogun of Wano. Yeah, and now he's actually he must now take that role. And we learned that actually, he was born. He jumped forward 20 years into the future.
Yep.
Yeah.
Where he's reunited by his sister.
Yeah.
Who ages 20 years.
Yeah. And arguably the oldest princess Oda introduced in One Piece, because normally they're all like Vivi's age.
Mm-hmm.
The only exception being, I think, Violet.
Oh.
But
yeah, I think you're right.
But I think Violet was only just created for that so Oda could do that storyline with Rebecca and Kyros.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, this arc is crazy, folks. It's we even got a revelation that the gum fruit isn't actually the gum fruit.
Nope.
Yeah.
Which is, at least for me, it's kind of a point of contention. Like, we're turning Luffy into the chosen one now.
I saw the discourse that came out that day when that chapter dropped. I was like, okay, you know what? It is one thing. It is a point of contention. And then I saw some people comparing that shit to like Naruto with the Sage's Six Paths. I'm like, no.
I'd say that it isn't like that. I think if Luffy ended up actually being a reincarnation of Joy Boy, then yes. But at the very least, he's just more of inherited the will of Joy Boy.
But continue on with what you were saying, Steve.
Yeah. So, also, Gear 5. Just, wow.
I kind of had a feeling we were going to get Gear 5 at some point.
Yeah. I will say this. I think, regardless of how we got to Gear 5, I think Gear 5 in itself is just perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. No doubt. But, of course, when that thing happened, now everyone's talking about, well, did Shanks really know? No, he didn't know.
No, he didn't.
Like,
well,
Shanks may be strong, but he's still an idiot.
Yeah.
Well,
I think he knew how rich a devil fruit could make him, but I don't think he particularly knew that devil fruit was not the gum fruit, but rather the what they call it again.
The Hito no Mi Sun God Nika.
Yeah, that.
Well, I think there is a case you could argue. Perhaps maybe Shanks did know, and it's mostly due to the things with Ace that we learn about in this arc. What stuff? It's like, and arguably with what Roger. You have like him and talking with Roger in the fact, and it does in many ways. It's kind of interesting because we know that. Even back when Shanks was with, went in East Blue, we've learned that Shanks was a rather infamous pirate at the time. I mean, the One Piece Red film, Data Books revealed that he had a bounty of $1 billion at that time. So it's interesting that Shanks conveniently arrives at the island where Roger's son is secretly hiding there. And he has arguably the devil fruit that Joy Boy possessed. So it's like, arguably, and Roger, in the flashback, revealed that he thinks maybe his kid will find Laugh Tale in the future. So arguably, that's like, in many ways, it's saying that, let's see, Ace was originally set up to be the chosen one, or the one that will bring the dawn, if you will. By either chance or by fate, Luffy stupidly ate the gum fruit, and then Shanks just decide, you know what, leave that for the best, and then trust Luffy with his hat and all that stuff.
Yeah, see, not really helping the whole turning him into the chosen one argument.
Yeah, it's not really helping that.
But speaking of Laugh Tale, that's another thing. So, remember when I talk about name changes? Well, apparently, all this time, Raftel was now Laugh Tale. And it's... What?
That was kind of bizarre, I will admit. I was like changing Raftail to Laughtail?
And it's not as if no one goofed up the English translation.
No.
But it's like, that's kind of a big pill to swallow there, Oda. I think, admittedly, yeah, Laughtail makes more, it's a much better name, considering who Roger is.
Yeah.
But at least Raftel, when it was still known as Raftel, kind of gives it an air of mystique vibes, if you will.
It does.
I think maybe Oda intentionally did that as to not give the idea of what Laughtail is until more towards the end.
I mean, One Piece is already goofy. You could have just named it Laughtail way back.
Right off the get-go? Yeah.
People would have still been fine with it. But it's a case of Toei not even knowing when they told Funimation and 4Kids when they were dubbing it. It's called Raftel.
Now, interestingly, it seems that with Wano, the One Piece anime staff has been informed quite a lot more about the future stuff in the manga than I think many people expected or even guessed. Was like, particularly like some hints about the identity of the 9 scabbards. I think was the most infamous one with their openings. Let's see, because one of the what initially appeared to be one of the bad guys of the arc turned out to be actually one of the good guys. And the opening, let's see, with where they put that character in implies that, you know what, he might have actually been a part of this group. So yeah, so in a sense, you could argue that the anime sort of did spoil stuff even the manga readers didn't realize at the time. At least that's what, at least that's what apparently so many people discuss on that. But yeah, this arc ended up being, I think, a lot longer than everyone expected. I think everyone expected this to be a mega arc, but I didn't think everyone expected it to be as, let's see, to go, at least in terms of years, be as long as the publications for, like, the final arc of Naruto, the final arc of Bleach, and sort of the final arc of Fairy Tail. I mean, was Fairy Tail 3 or 4 years, Lucky? I think it might have been 3 years, because I think there's actually less chapters for the last arc.
Yeah, but it was 3, I remember. I think it started in 2015?
Yeah,
it was 2015, I remember.
Yeah, but yeah, this arc is arguably, One Piece's mega arc, pretty much.
Let's see here. Whole Cake Island was 2 years, by the looks of things. And I guess people expected it to be that long, just a couple of years.
No,
yeah, it's and right behind it is Dressrosa.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is now officially the longest arc in One Piece.
Yeah.
So far, we'll see how long. Well,
do you still remember the days when people were like, "We're never getting out of Dressrosa"?
Oh yeah, I remember. I even got a bit frustrated with how long Dressrosa was at one point. But yeah,
although I'll say this much: at least Wano has had a bit more going on than Dressrosa.
It did. Yeah.
I think what benefited Wano is that with Dressrosa, it was like the majority of what's going on was happening in one day, while with Wano, it sort of cleverly did this sort of thing called, of like doing acts in each for like certain points of the arc in the story's arc, where you had Act 1, which was just like a simple adventure of Luffy reuniting with Zoro and exploring the certain part of Wano, the Kuri region, meeting friends and allies alike, with resulting in sort of like a climax battle with him fighting Kaido, only to learn that he stands no chance against him as he is right now. Act 2 being the Straw Hats trying to gather allies, mostly in the capital, and learning as much of the enemy as they can, while Luffy is training in the prison of Udon. Sort of like 2 storylines going on with that one. And then Act 3, besides the initial flashback of Oden, learning quite a lot about the world of One Piece as a whole, then having like the big battle, the war that was being hyped up against Kaido for like ages, with like the raid of Onigashima, and like the epilogue with all the aftermath stuff that you learned and all that. But yeah, and the Fritzy, but I guess we'll get that to that, but later. In many ways, it's like the Wano arc was like, you could argue as like 3 separate arcs in itself, being a part of this mega arc, if you will. But you actually had a point where you could take a breather, compared to say like other mega arcs in One Piece, or even mega arcs in like other shonen series. So, granted, I guess you could argue that the Bleach with the Aranka arc, the wiki did something similar with like with the Aranka arc, where the first bit was less like called the Aranka arc, with like until Orihime was taken away, then Eiko Mundo, I guess, and then Fake Kurakata Town. But I don't think Kubo ever officially did that himself. I think that's much more of a fan thing. And arguably, I know that apparently the Naruto's war arc is considered to be 4 separate arcs, but to be honest, it doesn't feel like that.
I mean, even Fairy Tail did that with Tartarus. Like, you had Tartarus, and then you had like these different subtypes to it. Yeah,
I guess you could say it's like Tartarus, but I guess it feels more like a bit more ambitious with how it did it. But anyways, the sort of breather things with those in between arcs gave us a chance to like explore outside of Wano for a bit.
That is one thing.
Yeah. And in many ways, it was interesting because those like sort of interlude chapters, which for some people felt like sometimes because of the world building and lore behind them, some people felt like it was more hype than the stuff going on at Wano, at least with Acts 1 and 2, since those were sort of like build-up ones.
If you want to talk about character highlights, I guess one of the big ones that, well, besides Kaido and Oden, is Yamato. And hoo boy!
There's a lot with Yamato.
There's a lot with Yamato's character. Let's address the elephant in the room. Who is Yamato exactly, and who does Yamato identify as? Officially, there is no official explanation. Because no one wants to give one.
Yeah. But see, when we first... In story, Yamato identifies as he.
Yes.
Even though he was born female.
Yeah, it was introduced...
However, with color spread number, chapter 1084?
Yes.
Yeah.
She was amongst the group of the ladies.
She was.
Which, for a lot of the trans fans out there, it doesn't exactly...
It doesn't help the situation.
Yeah.
Yes.
Also, you got like...
What do I feel? I feel that Yamato is a she, but she identifies as Oden. Because that's literally his entire personality. He wants to be like Oden.
Yeah, no, I was thinking the same thing. If anything, would it be fair to identify Yamato as a tomboy?
I mean, I would, but again, the only, like, if you want to say the only official confirmation, with the Japanese exclusive Vivre cards, the Vivre cards,
yeah,
they list her gender as she. Now, how much influence does Oda have with merchandise? Who's to say? Some say it's a lot, some say not at all. All I'll say is with the color spread, kind of leans towards more into Yamamoto being a girl.
Yes.
I think maybe, let's see, I think one guy I talked to kind of used that map. Yamato's like a cisgendered female that identifies as a male. I'm not sure if you said that correctly or not, though.
No, you did.
You did.
Okay.
For the sake of argument, we will call Yamamoto he, because we've got nothing else to go on. He literally makes his whole personality off of Oden. Besides that whole thing, he's actually... If Yamamoto and Zoro were to fight against each other, I'm pretty sure it'd be a close battle.
It would be a really close battle.
Well, yeah.
Like, I'm amazed that he held himself against Kaido for the amount of time that he did.
Yamato is arguably probably the most popular character to be just introduced out of nowhere that everyone immediately wanted to be the next Straw Hat.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, we had like a few contenders at the time. I think Carrot was particularly, I think, everyone's next bet. Or maybe Vivi returning. Maybe not, depending on what happened with her and Reverie, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And there might have been one or two other characters. I think maybe Law at one point, but I think that sort of died down. But the moment when you're introduced to Yamato and you think and you hear from Kaido's son what is going to be an enemy of the Straw Hats, but then turns out to be an ally, and you ace, many people we want Yamato to join.
Yeah.
It was like instant too.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think there's ever been a character more hyped to join the crew than, I guess, Yamato. Then again, I guess there's never been a character that seemed to be more eager to join the Straw Hats than Yamato.
That's true.
Mm-hmm.
So when he didn't at the end, it caused quite a bit of backlash.
Dude, that discussion went on for days.
Oh yeah. Me personally, I think it'll be a case just like Jinbei, where he'll eventually join, just not now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I am wondering if that is more of Otis doesn't want to make this like one of the main characters because there's so many main characters right now, but just it'll be like the final saga. Because I think, in many ways, I think after this, towards the end of this arc, I had a feeling that the epilogue of One Piece would have a lot more. They have a lot more characters that we know in the past eventually join the Straw Hats because of this other character in Wano that was introduced, Tama. But yeah, I definitely say I definitely say like my favorite interactions with Yamato was, of course, with Luffy. But I think also one of the reasons why Oda's not, and I think depending on who you ask, Yamato has not joined Luffy yet because he knows so much due to Oden's journal. Because some people theorized that when Oda took that 4-week hiatus, he decided and he wanted to streamline the final saga a bit. He probably realized that having Yamato join straight away would
lengthen it too much.
Yeah, so I think some people theorized that. That was the same case with like the identity of the 10th Titanic captain and Blackbeard's crew. Now, whether or not that's true or not, I don't know, but I definitely say Yamato will probably come back at some point. I mean, Luffy's even offered him to join when he wants to, as long as 2 other certain characters. But yeah,
Right.
But yeah, I guess for many people just let's see hoping because Luffy talked about having 10 crew members. Now it's been debated whether or not that means Luffy himself included with the number. But I think many people have just been waiting for that number. And I think for many people, Yamato was like the last hope of that. When it didn't happen, you had the controversy. Now, I think there are some cases for and against Yamato joining the crew. Let's see, 4, of course, was joining Iga and, let's see, inheriting Oden's will. And also, depending on how you view the Yamato's gender, would also add for a bit of a diversity with the Straw Hats, I guess you could say.
Definitely.
Oh, yeah.
And the things against, Yamato never necessarily, I guess you could argue, had a, let's see, tragic backstory of like the loss of a beloved one. I guess you could count the samurai, I guess.
You could.
Let's see, just Yamato coming just straight away, seemingly out of nowhere, not really having I guess you could say, defining moment in the arc where where Yamato defeated a particularly strong opponent. I mean, you do see some minor victories against, say, like one of those numbered giants or like that giant flame cloud that was created to blow up the place, but stuff like that. But yeah.
In addition to Odin and his whole backstory involving both Whitebeard and Roger, the horror that is the rejected smile fruits. We have Tonoyasu, aka Shimosuke.
Yashi?
Yeah. We have him and Little Toko, perpetual smilers. And man, oh man, was it a gut punch to the feels when Zoro found out why the citizens can never cry?
Yeah, it's like, talk about like the worst type of dictator you could have. It's like one that is just so controlative that he won't even allow you to properly grieve your loved ones.
It's kind of dark, actually, when you think about it.
Yeah, I think, but yeah, I definitely say it was kind of interesting because there was subtle hints that Oda gave that probably should have made us figure out when you saw like in the Zoro arc with like all those different grunts where you had like the gifters, the waiters, and the pleasures, and like you're just like it feels like a sort of random group of pirate divisions, really.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, let's see, at the very least you knew there was something with the gifters being devil fruit users, but you didn't quite know what the difference was between the pleasures and waiters until you had that revelation about Smile, which, blimey, it's like, Wetzy was revealed that the Smiles only give you like a 1/10 chance, of course, getting the devil fruit powers. But yeah, I definitely say the next time the Straw Hats see Caesar again, he's gonna get punched in the face.
He will. I can already see it.
Oh, yeah. And then, of course, we have the big bad himself, Kaido.
Which, Kaido by himself, I'll say, I'll keep it short on my end, but it's kind of like, is he one of the top tier villains for you, or is he like, well, left to be desired? Because I know that's a big discussion that goes on with.
I mean, I kind of call him Crocodile 2.0.
Yeah.
Because referring earlier to the George Lucas statement, Crocodile beats Luffy, Luffy gets back up and then beats up Crocodile.
Yes.
What happens here? Kaido beats Luffy, Luffy gets back up and beats up Kaido.
It's literally the same thing.
Yeah. Now, arguably, Kaido's the first villain to beat him 3 times in a row before finally losing.
True.
Yeah.
I mean, Crocodile beat him twice. Being in second place ain't so bad. That's what I was going to say.
Right.
I think for me, Kaido is probably the perfect example of an unstoppable force in nature that Luffy had to try and overcome, at least.
I'll say that.
Yeah, but see, I don't think...
I'm not saying that Kaido is literally Crocodile 2.0.
No. Yeah.
I mean, arguably, I think there's a lot more going for Crocodile in terms of being a master planner and personality, I think, than Kaido.
In addition to being an emperor, he actually managed to, fulfill his conquest of ruling a land.
Mm-hmm.
Crocodile, he if I remember right, he was a little bit too ambitious with Baroque works there.
Yeah. But yeah, no, interesting. There is interesting if Crocodile succeeded in his plan for Alabasta, he would have learned, like, oh shit, I've got to go to Wano.
He would have.
Yeah, but I think the thing about Kaido is that in many ways, he was hyped up as this unstoppable force of nature. In many ways, I guess you could say it was similar hype to what Whitebeard was in the first half of One Piece, and arguably some of the hype that you could say for other shonen long-term villains, particularly like, say, Zeref and Fairy Tail and Agnologia and Madara and Naruto. This legendary figure that no one would stand a chance against by themselves. And in many ways, Kaido had arguably, for many people, like the best introduction when you saw him at the end of Dressrosa, with like him falling down from like a sky island. His hobby was suicide. Let's see. He tried to be executed multiple times. Only ever defeated 7 times in his life. Captured 18 times, and let's see. And the whole situation was like, oh, let's see. On a one-on-one situation, always bet on Kaido.
10,000 meters. Just take that into perspective. He fell 10,000 meters from Sky Island. That's nuts.
Yeah, I think when Luffy was finally getting to Wano, I think many people were like wondering, how on earth is Luffy going to beat him?
Just because of that expectation too, was like,
yeah. In fact, many people suspected that he wouldn't fight Kaido alone and all that stuff. Which, to be fair, he did fight with others against Kaido for a while, but eventually we saw how Luffy did. Now, whether or not you think Luffy power scaled a bit too quickly or not, I think could be up for debate, though. Arguably, I'll get more to that on the weaknesses of One Piece a bit, but of this arc a bit, but yeah. I'd definitely say it was kind of interesting, let's see, and I do feel like one of the biggest, let's see, about Kaido is the fact that you learn quite a lot of his character, but I feel like at the same time, Oda held a bit, where he's like, Kaido arguably believes that the strong should rule, and arguably that seems to be from like his backstory, where he comes from a country that was like just kissing up to the world nobles, despite the fact that they don't. The majority of what we've seen of them, most of them don't have actually strength themselves. I mean, the only reason people fear them is because you attack them, an admiral comes, and you're dead. But after once escaping his country, after it betrays him, he goes through like pirating, and eventually meets, of course, his right-hand man, and which tells him he might be this prophesized Joe boy that will change the world. And perhaps maybe at one point he believed that, but seemingly gives up on it, and it just wants to destroy the world and have a big fight and all that stuff, and cause a bit of make what the world he thinks should be proper, like the strong rule over the weak, if you will. Rather than just not some class of descendants of gods, if you will. Now, arguably, it could have been executed a lot better, but I think you get the sort of gist of Kaido. But yeah, I think there's also interesting. It's his personality a bit when it comes to fighting style, which particularly the drunk phase, which pretty much reminded me of Rock Lee in Part 1 against Kimimaro.
Yeah, it is kind of similar to that, actually, now that you mentioned it.
But yeah, but it's interesting. This it seems he wants to destroy the world, but he also is looking for someone that can actually fight him and even maybe possibly defeat him. And it's interesting how whenever he gets close to that, he gets frustrated because something always intervenes with that. Until finally Luffy beats him.
Well, I guess with that segue, let's move on into this arc's strengths.
Do you want to talk about the Red Scabbards, Tama, and some of the other beast pirates first?
Do they really contribute anything to the grand
That's what I was thinking. I was like, do they have all the contributions to the arc?
Like, they're in the grand scheme of things, they're just barely. Well, I shouldn't say barely a footnote, but nothing. You know, once we get to Luffy versus Wano round. Luffy versus Wano. Luffy versus Kaido round 4. There, anything else is just small. But so yeah, this arc strengths. I mentioned this earlier, but in comparison to Dressrosa, there's a lot more going on. However, because of that, it's a lot more engaging, and thus I didn't feel as if, oh man, when's this gonna arc at? Instead, I felt like, oh man, can't wait to see what's next.
I was the same way, honestly, when it came to this arc.
At least some of the time. Then there were the other times it was like, boy, Oda, you're towing the line here.
Right?
Towing the line.
Well, like I said probably earlier, I definitely said the 3-act structure thing was arguably a strength of breaking up the arc a bit, giving you time to breathe.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing about the 3-act structure. I think Oda handled it pretty well with 1 and 2. I think 3, as good as 3 was, I do feel like it was, loaded.
We'll save it for weaknesses, but I kind of feel the same.
Mm-hmm.
Guess another strength this arc has is the world building.
Oh yeah, there was a lot.
I mean, you could say that about every arc, but in this particular instance, we finally get more history on Gold Roger.
Arguably the most we've gotten on him.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing of the world building was, of course, chapter 958, where we finally learned about the Rocks Pirates, which was mentioned a bit just at the beginning of Reverie, one thing we forgot to talk about, and the fact that there was actually a pirate crew that was even bigger than Roger before he rose to his dominance, and we end up learning why is the fact that there was a pirate that once had the command of Whitebeard, Kaido, Big Mom, a few other names that we have heard about at the very least, from Captain John and Shiki the Golden Lion, and a few other characters that names seem to be more major in the following arcs, at least in terms of world building. But you had a pirate that had them under the command, who was arguably leading this which was arguably a chaotic terrorist group that caused the world government so much trouble that it needed to be brought down by the combined efforts of Roger and Garp.
It's quite a feat, I will say. When I found out, all that information in the flashback, I was like, God damn.
Yeah. And the fact that the pirate and the captain himself, Rox, full name was Rox D. Sabek. It's another D, and I think there was also a Fifi card thing, like Steve mentioned, how the Blackbeard Pirates' main ship is called the Saber or Spear of Sabek, which led to all kinds of theories about the connection between Blackbeard and Sabek. But at the very least, we know that, this is arguably the will that Blackbeard has inherited. As Luffy is more of the one who's inherited Roger's will, while Blackbeard is more of inherited Sabek's will, as we learn that this is the pirate that was probably Roger's first and greatest rival. There was just all that sort of world building, and also the first hint that, okay, Garp is actually the beast that Mitzi people describe, because we only seen him in his old age, and some people debated whether or not he was strong or not. In fact, I think there's even some debates about whether or not Roger was actually strong or not until this chapter and then the Olden flashback, where we got a glimpse of his strength.
I mean, Roger and Dragon were his sons. If that doesn't show you how strong he is, or should be personally, I don't know what it should.
Yeah, I think I'd probably agree with you there that they were always strong, but people didn't know how strong. And I think during the time with like the hype of Kaido and Big Mom, people thought that, you know what, maybe they're the strongest, and maybe Dragon and Roger weren't as strong as people thought they are. But I think once you got that, I think that the whole stuff with Roger, no, Roger's clearly the strongest. In fact, even Kaido acknowledges it and all that stuff. I think it's also interesting that we finally learned that, okay, Roger did not have a devil fruit.
No, he didn't, which I thought was actually really fascinating that Oda did not go down that route. Because it would be, because if it was any other writer, I think that would be like the really easy approach. Like, oh yeah, of course Roger would have a devil fruit. But not giving him a devil fruit, it says a lot about, who he is as a character. And
yeah. But I think that...
Well, then again, Zoro and Sanji don't have devil fruits, and they managed to hold their own pretty well. So, personally, I wasn't too surprised by that revelation, but it was still neat nonetheless.
Yeah. I think it was the main thing was whether or not would you need a devil fruit or just something like Haki to be at the top of the world. And I think with that, it kind of implied that Haki is sort of like the main thing, really. But I also think there's another thing about the world building that I think just gave some sort of clarity on is like the power scaling of the world of One Piece, because I think there's always like these debates on what was strong and what was weaker than Yonko commanders, admirals, warlords, and Yonko. I think we've kind of got a clear idea from this arc where Yonko commanders, while strong, they're not as strong as admirals if it gets down to a serious one-on-one fight between them. Yonko, while admirals can fight Yonko, but arguably, when it comes to a one-on-one against an admiral and a Yonko would arguably win. And the warlords seem to range from a mixed level of like Yonko commanders to like maybe close to Yonko, depending on the individual warlord.
Without a doubt.
Oh yeah. Let's see. Any other strengths here?
Definitely say what?
The fights.
Oh yeah.
Well, duh. If there's one thing One Piece always exceeds at is the fights.
Always the fights.
Now, whether or not the fights can hold your interest is another thing.
Well,
there's definitely been some fights in the past where it's like, whatever. And then there's other fights where it's more middle of the road. It's interesting, but it's kind of like reading Dragon Ball Z.
Besides maybe the exception of maybe Whole Cake and some fights in Dressrosa, I think there's been some disappointments with most of the fights that have happened in the New World, as they seem to be over before. Most of them ended up quicker before they started getting interesting and all that stuff. I mean, let's see, the Straw Hats, when you got up against the new Fishman pirates, they not for the most part easily stomped them, as it was just like the beginning arc, and they were just more of a warm up for the Straw Hats. Dressrosa looked like it would have been an ex sort of Straw Hats against a group of pirates like Alabasta or CP9, but that ended up being the Straw Hat Grand Fleet for the most part. But here in Wano, you finally got like an arc where the majority of the Straw Hats got a fight against a pirate group. And in many ways, it's also a bit surprising because you even had some chapters, which is arguably a bit of a rarity in the fights, because you know how in most of the arcs in the New World, you'd have like a fight going on for a couple of pages and then it just skipped to this other part of the story and then come back to later when it looks like the fight's just in the middle or just wrapping up. Here in One Piece, you got in just quite a couple of chapters where you're just focusing on just this one fight, and even continues on to like at least one or two more chapters. Of course, that was with the raid of Onigashima, but it's like that was just kind of rare to see in One Piece at the time, at least with the New World Saga.
Well, let's move on to weaknesses. So, let's see. Well,
already just one.
Yeah, I suppose, and this is just going to get this is only going to become more and more true as time goes on.
Mm-hmm.
But the final fight involving Luffy, Zoro, and Sanji, and that's it. Each of them gets their own bad guy to fight. The rest of the Straw Hat Pirates, sorry guys, you just aren't strong enough to hold readers' interests, unfortunately.
I do say they got at least the Blackbeard pirates, at least, but yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean,
I think aside from Robin,
yeah,
what I can think of.
With the other Straw Hats, with Usopp, Nami, Chopper, Frankie, Brooke, Jinbei, I struggle to think. Like even right now, I'm struggling to think.
Yeah.
What else they contributed to the final battle, and I get it that in universe they're not as strong as Zoro, Sanji, or Luffy, but if you're gonna drag them along for the final battle, give them something to do, something significant to do.
It's significant.
Well, I think I'll get more into that, but when we talk about Egghead a bit. But yeah, I definitely say like a weakness. Well, I think what we talked a bit about earlier about the 3-act structure was very helpful of One Piece, but I do feel like it felt like with the Act 3 sort of like a bit weirdly paced because it felt like there should have been the parts where there were like a break between certain parts. For example, I think after the Odin flashback and you had like Conjurer revealed to be the traitor and Jinbei joining the Straw Hats fully, that should have been sort of like that felt like that could have been a good place to have sort of like a break of an act thing and then do one of those interlude chapters and then have the Wano raid. And then after Momonosuke revealed himself to be to the citizens of Wano, you could have had like an interact thing there and have a little break and then have like Act 5 kind of thing, like a sort of mini thing. In many ways, I think when the act things were first beginning, people were told or heard there was going to be a 5-act structure thing, like the sort of Japanese play kind of thing.
Okay, because I was like, I didn't hear anything about it being a 5-act structure, but
yeah, I know. At least I think there were people theorizing or at least talking about it, and perhaps many people thought that there'd be introductions, building up actions, tragedy, comeback, and an epilogue or something. I think in many ways, in some ways, that might have benefited because Act 3 started to get a bit dragged a bit. Let's see, for some people that they were wondering like, were we going to get like interact thing at the end? But that didn't happen. So I do feel like one might have been a bit better paced if perhaps you had that sort of break in between bits.
Where do you guys feel like Act 3 started to feel bloated?
That's kind of hard to say.
Yeah.
I want to say, God, this is hard. I can't exactly pick the one moment where it started to feel bloated. Let's just say around Joy Boy's revelation, because it's one thing when Luffy transformed into Gear 5, but for them to add on the Joy Boy aspect, I felt okay. We're starting to lose focus a little bit here. Let's get back to Luffy versus Kaido, shall we? Please, maybe. And it took like 2 or 3 chapters for that to happen.
Honestly, that's kind of where I felt too. It was like just right around that point.
But that's me personally. I can't. And honestly, me saying Act 3 was bloated is kind of like saying Dressrosa took too long.
Yeah, right. Like if anything, like this is like more of like a minor nitpick, guy. It's not like this isn't one of those things where it's like, oh, like totally kills the arc.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I'd say one weakness is, despite the fact that there was plenty of characters for everyone to have a fight, you sort of didn't get really like Usopp or Chopper having like a defining win moment, I guess you could say, at least in terms of action.
Mm-hmm.
I guess in one aspect of a weakness is that, now this might just be me, but like how Whole Cake Island was kind of like the year of Sanji?
Right.
I guess in some cases this could have been like the year of Zoro.
Yeah.
In that aspect.
It does start off that way,
Yeah.
But unfortunately, once Odin's backstory came into the picture, Or hell, once Momonosuke's backstory came into the picture, started to lose focus on that a little bit, you know?
It did.
I mean, you got a bit of a flashback with, like, Zoro's backstory where you see, like, how he got his, like, initial 2 swords that he had at the beginning of East Blue.
Mm-hmm.
From Kunai's grandfather revealing to be the creator of Emma. And then you, like, got this tease connection between, like, Zoro and the same family that Kunai and Yashui were part of. And the fact that you had one of the samurai daimyos that Yamato befriended look exactly like Zoro, but with blue hair. You tend to think that he might have been somehow related to him, and you got nothing on it, but then later, in an SBS, you learn that actually Zoro is related to them by his, like, particularly that one samurai with that mythical dog that you had in the arc for a bit, where it turns out that his grandmother is that guy's sister, and that that sister had a daughter that married a guy called Rana and all that stuff. And and eventually it just went down to like Zoro's father being killed off by pirates, which might be an interesting thing for the fact why Zoro might have become a pirate hunter in the first place, and all that stuff. And he's got all this sort of like family tree history, and in the SBS backstory, and not really in the actual manga.
That's the thing. It's like, well, yeah, technically you do get it, you just don't get them like the actual story, which I guess that is like a missed opportunity. Is that like you could have like actually done it in the story itself.
And I think this is another thing that, and it's also unfortunately not the only character that's tragic of having his backstory in an SBS, because you also had Kid's backstory in an SBS.
That's true.
You learn about like this lover that him and Killer had, that they accidentally upsetted, and then she died, and then they took over the island with a few others of their crew, and then sailed off. Yeah, it's got like an interesting backstory, but it's like, let's say, but you don't really see it in Kid, and I think unfortunately due to the fact that most of Kid's exploits or failures have mostly happened off screen, you sort of got Kid being a bit of a joke with some One Piece fans. I think I've even seen some people do the meme with Kid with Sakura when she says, "I finally caught up to them," but with like Luffy and Law and all that stuff. Because before the time skip happened, the most hype amongst the Worst Generation outside of Luffy and Zoro was Kid. But when Law became sort of more of a major character, and Kid was mostly off screen and all that stuff with like what was going on in his storyline, he sort of became a bit of a joke for certain fans, where some people sort of look down on him, and that probably doesn't help with like what happens after with Egghead.
In a sense, yeah.
In fact, I think I've seen some people call Kid like the worst rival type character in the shonen.
Yeah. Not a huge disagreement from me, but One Piece is not the type of story where you want to introduce rivals.
Nope, no, you do not.
Especially well, I shouldn't say this late in the game, but certainly.
Well, I think it's like on.
If he was introduced as Luffy's rival way back in Sabaody Archipelago, it could have been turned into something interesting, but unfortunately.
Well, the thing is, apparently, the Worst Generation, or Supernova, as you will, were just an idea on the spot that Oda created during that arc, thinking that he needed to try and make the arc more interesting, and he came up with like these 9 different characters that were supposed to be pirate crews on par with Luffy and all that stuff. And the one that got the most focus was, of course, Kid, because like Luffy, he had a member of his crew that was also part of that Worst Generation. And apparently, initially, that's what Oda was figuring. Kid would be the major character, but he was too much on the sidelines a bit. I think it might have, I think it could have helped if perhaps Oda had told more about Kid's accomplishments rather than his arguable defeats, where he lost an arm against Shanks, was drove out of Big Mom's territory, though we'd later got clarification that he actually wounded a Yonko commander and took what he wanted, which was revealed to be like Big Mom's poneglyph at the time, towards the end of the thing. I feel like if perhaps Oda perhaps gave a bit more hype to Kid. You could have given more hype to Kid if he perhaps revealed that during the 2 years that the Straw Hats were sort of absent, you had Kid just doing damage to different Yonko, fleets, but revealed that, say, he defeated like a member of the Topiropo that was there before X-Drake took over, or even defeated, or maybe be the one to actually beat Snack instead of Mad Monk Urg or something, but all that stuff. So it's just like, you've got like the build-up of like, okay, Kid has taken on some powerful pirates, and now he's going to finally take on a Yonko. Well, at least with like Law, even if he never took down one of the big bads, you at least seen Law take down Smoker, take down Virgo, and Treble from Doflamingo's crew. But yeah, but I think that's just mainly one of the problems, I guess, with Oda. In fact, cutting out certain backstories to explain certain things. And apparently there was also 2 other backstories he broke out, which involved like 2 members of the 9 Scabbards, like Izo and Kiku, a bit more details on like how Odin befriended them, and one with like Yamato befriending that one-numbered giant.
Although it does explain a few things for sure.
And I think this is another weakness that apparently was caused by the result of Film Red. Apparently, because when Yamato revealed that he was not going to join the crew, you had the one chapter before where he says, "I'm going to go out and set sail," and you've revealed in the next chapter, "Oh wait, I decided to stay here in Wano." Turns out, after Wano, you learn the reason why Yamato didn't join is because due to that final admiral coming in, Admiral Wakari or Ran Ryuku, I think.
Something like that.
Yeah. I will say I do like his devil fruit powers being wood or nature itself, if you will. I think that it's very suitable for an admiral to show just how dangerous he can be. Especially he can suck out the life of other people. I'd say it's just like you don't get an explanation. Due to that admiral's appearance, Yamato decided that okay, until Momonosuke is strong enough to protect Wano himself, he will stick around and support Momonosuke until he's ready to come back later.
Which, honestly, as an explanation, I don't think is really that bad, because I do remember the whole discourse about Yamato not joining the crew, and
I feel like if you had that flashback at the time when Wano was closing, you'd have a lot more, you'd have probably a lot less anger at it at the time. It's like, this feels out of nowhere.
Right?
And, I suppose this is another weakness that it's just a sort of more. This is more of a cultural differences between countries or mistranslations. I think that happen. But okay, let's see. We briefly talked about Momonosuke's sister. Let's see, Kiryu. When we were first introduced, she's Kumasaki, the seemingly shallow geisha thing that Orochi's in love with, only to feel like to be Momo's sister, who was just staying as a disguise to arguably help Denjiro, who was pretending to also be one of Orochi's subordinates, allowing her to get close to Orochi to one day have the chance to kill him, which, when Orochi thought she was dead but then came back, he was like smitten all her heels and all that stuff. Interesting enough, we haven't really talked much about Orochi in this discussion, I will admit, but yeah. But I think, but when we in the Old and Black story, we learned that Orochi was a victim of the prejudice people had against a particular family because of the crimes Orochi's grandfather did. So he became the shogun of Wano as revenge against them. And when they finally got to the bit where Kumasaki revealed her identity and Orochi was starting to die due to the burning and all that stuff, he was on paranoia against the Scabbards. We learned that in the final exchange between Kurosaki and Orochi, where he mocked her about how Odin was burned to boil and all that stuff, and she responded, "Well, Kasumi born to burn." For many people, that felt like a sort of contradiction to the sort of message that Oda normally tells with One Piece, about how you shouldn't blame someone's bloodline for their crimes and all that stuff, and rather their own individual things. And I think that led to many wrong tastes of things. But apparently, the way it was translated in Japan and all that stuff, it was supposed to be a sort of reference or sort of style of dialect that was similar to a sort of play style of Japanese, and it was more referring to like a pun, I guess you would, with her just saying that Orochi, since his name's Kurozumi, I think, he was born, and his surname means charcoal. He was born himself, particular to burn, but it made it feel like it was like the clan as a whole, which is also a bit kind of witty, awkward, because also in the SBS, it's revealed that Tama, the girl that Luffy befriends, who played a huge part in the war, particularly turning all the smiles against Kaido, turns out her family are actually members of the same clan that Orochi is from. So it's like, yeah,
it's kind of like one of those things where like all like the inner workings of like some of the characters, like you kind of just don't really get like in the story.
Yeah, don't get in the story, and yeah, and I think also the same.
I guess you could say it's like, well, if you get the volume, you do technically get technically.
Yeah, but it's also kind of like the whole due to like cultural differences and translations, the final that exchange, probably just how it was set up, made it look poor in taste, I think, for non-Japanese readers. I'd say that was one of the weaknesses, but yeah. Another thing I think is perhaps maybe Oda introduced too many characters in this arc.
In this arc?
Yeah. Because in this arc, we learned that Kimimon and Kanjuro and Raizo were part of a group called the Nine Red Scabbards. Then we got all those Yakuza Japanese mafia bosses, with the one that trained particularly like Luffy and how to use the Hako to defeat Kaido. Then you had like Orochi's forces with like those ninja and those samurai groups that mostly amounted to nothing, except maybe that one that was head of the ninjas fighting against Raizo. It was arguably the longest off-screen battle in One Piece history. You had, of course, the Topiropo and the All-Stars, and arguably the majority of them did end up fighting the Straw Hats in long battles, but you kind of had Page 1 taken out by Big Mom, and Jack, which I think many people, when first introduced, were expecting to be at least something of a warm-up fight for Luffy before going up against Kaido, ends up being taken out by Dogstorm instead, and it's just more like that in the background kind of thing. And of course you also had like the other group, like the Numbers, which was just giants apparently on the same level of Oars, but mostly just used to demonstrate how strong a particular character has become, like Luffy taking out one, Drake taking out one, Brock taking out one, Yamato taking out one. And also a couple of worst generation characters, but it's like, you had so many characters to focus on, and arguably Oda focused on the ones that mostly counted, like King and Queen for like Zoro and Sanji. Orochi as that comedic bad guy that's not as strong as you expect. Kaido and of course Big Mom with the Alliance, I guess. But yeah, and arguably the scabbards that arguably mattered the most, like Kimimon, Kikaku, and but yeah, like that. But yeah, there's like so many characters that not everyone got the chance of the spotlight, and even some of the Pups characters that probably should have gone more spotlight, like the Straw Hats, probably didn't get that much due to the focus on other characters. But yeah, but the list goes on just how many characters were introduced.
You could kind of say that about the other. I feel like that's kind of a time skip thing.
Yeah. Arguably, I'd say Whole Cake was probably still the biggest, with like the introduction of all of Big Mom's children.
Oh yeah, that was a lot to handle.
But yeah, but I would say for the most part, Oda did focus on the right ones.
I mean, you can really, I'll agree with Lucky here. You can really say that about any arc post the part 2 time skip, right? And yeah, the worst of it, I think, is Whole Cake Island, where not only are we introduced to Sanji's entire family, we also got to deal with Big Mom and her crew.
There was so much in Whole Cake Island. I was just like, y'all are cool, but you gotta like maneuver around and everything.
Yeah. So yeah, really, I don't have any other nitpicks with.
I think the only one I think the only thing else you could talk about is how Oda handled deaths, I guess. Now, arguably, this arc had a lot more deaths in the series than we're used to for One Piece, both in flashback and in the main timeline. I mean,
yes.
I mean, I think when I think some people were very genuinely surprised when Yasuri died.
That was kind of a surprise. I will.
Yeah.
Although I'll say this, it didn't hit me quite the same way as say Pedro's death was in Whole Cake. I don't think it's that, but
yeah. And then of course, let's see. Okay, there's that. But then of course, you did eventually get some deaths later on in Wano. But you also had a few fake out deaths because let's see, because the two most notable ones are Kimimon and Kikaku. Because in many ways, you had Kimimon talking about how he might have used all his luck when he just, let's see, which I will say was probably one of the funniest gags, is the fact that Kanjuro thinks Kimimon is this master planner and has managed to trick Orochi's spy that was Kanjuro, but turns out he just made an error in the location. And the other scabbards know, but just not Denjiro, who seems to idolize Kimimon as this masterful tactician. He thinks he's likely to die from this whole thing. And there's been quite a few cases when you've seen the arc that, okay, he should have died, but he survives, and one of the explanations is the law's cutting ability still is taking effect, and he didn't fully attach himself together, and he can talk by farts when he's having his legs contact Usopp later. Now, arguably, I guess because Kimimon had a wife, revealed to have a wife, I guess it was expected that he might just not die because he has to meet her. I think there's also the fact that I guess you could say Kikaku is also the way she got stabbed and all that stuff. Though I think arguably it was probably for the best that the one trans woman character that Oda just sort of properly defined, I guess you could say, did not die in the arc that she was introduced. Because I think now it caused a bit of debate on the fact that a common stereotype is that a gay or trans character, when introduced, sort of dies straight away or quite quickly from their introduction, and you just have a story writer just including that character in just for some brownie points. But I guess it's best not to get into that sort of topic. But of course, you did have deaths. I mean, arguably on the villain side, you arguably have Kanjuro and Orochi. They're confirmed to be dead. The CP0 agent that interrupted Luffy and Kaido's third bout. Let's see, it looked like he'd dead, but it seems like apparently his name was mentioned as taking a picture of Gear 5, so his death is unknown, even though it'd probably be more fitting just to have the character dead there. And while you did get deaths among the scabbards like Izo and Ashido and all that stuff, you didn't really figure out if they were dead until after you got confirmation, I guess you could say. Oh, and it was revealed in a One Piece cover story that Pound did survive Oven striking him, which in the last podcast I talked about him being one of the casualties, but now that's gone. But at the very least, Oda, we've seen that he's more open to doing deaths in the main timeline now, rather than just flashback, but still sort of does his fake outs with certain characters.
I mean, kind of say it's been a thing since, Ace. So
yeah, I mean,
the Ace's death from the 3 times game definitely did triggered that moving forward where we are now with One Piece.
Fair enough, but I just see. But I think it's just on one hand you've got more people dying because of Ace, but you still get some of those Pell fake outs. But yeah, I'd say that's just one sort of criticism that last criticism I can say for the arc.
Yeah,
because everything else is just pretty good.
It live up to the hype can kind of also kind of go back to how I started off this whole podcast with. Did it also live up to what Oda was saying about it, making Marineford look like child's play?
I think that might have actually been an editor.
Was it an editor?
No, I can't recall if it was Oda or an editor that said it.
Yes, it lived up to the hype. But that's how much it lived up to is debatable. Because there's just Well, first and foremost, let's address the quote there. Makes Marineford looks like child play.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Marineford was in two parts, Impel Down and Marineford itself.
Oh, yeah.
Marineford ended with Whitebeard's death and Ace's death. And also the revelation, well, at least to everyone else, that Dragon was Luffy's son. What does this end on? Well, it ends with Luffy being revealed as he's not the reincarnation of Joy Boy, but come on, guys.
Inheritor of the world, yeah.
Let's not kid ourselves here. It ends with that. It ends with the Gum fruit not actually being the Gum fruit. It ends with another Emperor's defeat.
Yeah, another Emperor's defeat. In a way, you could kind of say... Because didn't Luffy also say that this is kind of where he kind of makes his mark on, like, Wano?
Mm-hmm.
Something along those lines?
Something like that, yeah.
It ends with that. We also kind of get the revelation that Pluton is buried under in the depths of old Wano.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I will admit, that was a bit of a surprise to everyone, because they thought it was in Alabasta, but turns out it was in Wano.
So, taking all that into account, does Wano make Marineford look like a cakewalk? Personally, no. Marineford had the much better revelations, in my opinion.
It did.
And it did have somewhat of a stronger ending. It's not to say that makes Wano bad, or that you shouldn't hold it against it. It's just, when you compare...
Set the bar that high.
Yeah. Marineford just kind of set the bar high, and honestly, it's never... The post-time skip chapters have yet to reach that.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see where Egghead goes.
Yeah.
But for now, Marineford still remains to be topped.
Yeah. I'll say the same thing. Like, it did live up to the hype, but as far as it making Marineford look like child's play, no. I wouldn't say that. But again, that's not a bad thing. It just means, like, it's still, like, a really great arc, but if we're talking about, like, comparisons and, like, storytelling and quality and all that, like, Marineford still takes it.
I mean, now, Marineford, arguably, probably not, at least in terms of the impact of deaths. I feel like maybe if Kimimaru sort of died, well, maybe not as emotionally invested characters would say, maybe Ace and Whitebeard, I think could have made it, at least on the fact that a character that we've been following for quite a while has died, would have some sort of emotional impact. I think so. So I think in terms of character deaths, I'd say probably not. As for like the whole revelations about, let's see, Luffy being the one to inherit Joy Boy's will and having the Joy Berry Devil Fruit, arguably Luffy being the one to bring the dawn, I think, has been slowly built into the narrative. So I don't feel like him being like the chosen one thing kind of like as bad as when Naruto was revealed to be like child of prophecy or reincarnation, because Naruto was more of a character that felt like he was wanted to defy destiny to begin with, only to be like, oh, he's destiny. While Luffy's always been a bit more of a character that just didn't really care, and he just beats up whoever he just dislikes. Which just conveniently tended up to be the actual bad guys because he befriended all the right people. Let's see. So I think they cleverly sort of wrapped around that thing. Now, arguably, the Sun God Nika thing, I feel like that could have been built up perhaps a bit sooner. But I will admit, I do like the Gear 5 transformation. I think it was better than anything people were expecting because, well, everyone was expecting that to be the serious badass transformation. But instead, it just fundamentally was just everything that fits Luffy's character and all that stuff.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. Like, I know there were some people that are like, really, that's it for Gear 5? But I actually think it's very fitting. Not just for Luffy as a character, but it also just fits with the world that Otis created.
Yeah, in many ways, it's like my favorite transformation. It's like, and I even like Oda's reasoning behind it. It's like all these serious, bad, cool-ass fights, and he feels like it's kind of like gotten too serious and too extreme as of late. You kind of see that like with the other shonens. He feels like he wants One Piece to be a bit more fun, and arguably it's what it does. As like the majority of the fight between Luffy and Kaido with that Gear 5 was pretty fun. Arguably, it might have some problems with, like, when you need to have Luffy get into a more serious moment, though I feel like Oda will find a way around it. But I definitely think, like, it just gives the sort of creativity that just fits perfectly with Luffy.
I don't actually blame Oda for feeling that way, because it's, you know, like you said, it does add, like, a sense of fun and flavor to, like, the battles and everything. Now, I have seen some discussion going on with people thinking, does that mean we're going to get a Gear 6? I don't think we'll get that. I think this will be, like, where it's at. If we do get something that's above Gear 5, the only thing I could think of is, like, say, like, maybe a Gear 4, like, Snake mode equivalent. Maybe. I don't see it going anywhere past that, though. But
I definitely said the most epic part was when Luffy was able to turn himself into a giant. Because people have been wanting to see that with Luffy for years, and now we finally got it. I'd argue, like I said earlier, one is arguably probably the terms of best variety of action within the post-time skip. Perhaps maybe not the same intensity as, like, the sort of Marineford, where it was like a big battle a battle royale, if you will, where you had all these characters clashing with each other.
I mean, I was going to say this, like, a good way I could put the Wano arc, like, as far as the time skip goes, I'll go ahead and say it's the best.
Yeah, arguably the best in that respect, but arguably, is Kaido versus Luffy the best fight? Well,
that depends on you as the reader. Like, were you satisfied with it, or did you want more with it?
Let's see. Arguably, I'd say it had the best twists and turns in terms of the powers that was revealed in it.
Mm-hmm.
And arguably even some of the best action panels. But I definitely feel like Luffy versus Rob Lucci was arguably the most emotional big battle. And arguably probably had the best final, besides maybe that between Luffy and Crocodile. But I think also, like, Luffy versus Katakuri had a bit more focus and all that stuff.
It did.
And arguably had a bit more better fight choreography. But yeah, so arguably I think it really depends on what I am feeling at the time, but I feel like most people might say Katakuri versus Luffy or Luffy versus Rob Lucci. But I definitely say for many of the Straw Hats, arguably probably some of their best fights, well, particularly with the character Nico Robin, because of how little she usually gets to fight. But still, but yeah.
I love how, like, if you look at her flashback, like, she was always referred to as the Devil's Child. And I love how that kind of takes a whole nother meaning because of what happens with her fight.
Mm-hmm. But arguably, I'd say, in terms of New World, either Wano or Whole Cake would probably be considered the best arcs from, like, the New World saga.
I was going to say, if we were ranking these with the New World saga, Whole Cake and Wano, I think, are like neck and neck. I can't really decide who takes the number one spot. They could switch places depending on my mood. But I'd say those two, Dressrosa, and then Fishman.
Yeah, I'd say I'd have to agree with Lucky there. That's how I'd rank them so far.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say, for most part, it lived up to most of its expectations, but I don't think it's, like, at least in terms of Marineford intensity, not that level.
Yeah, like, if Marineford was, like, a pure perfection, which is, like, a 10 out of 10 for me, this... Oh my god, if I have to rank it on that scale, maybe Great Plus. Borderline amazing. I haven't really decided on, like, where it sticks there, but...
I think it's at least an 8 to 9 out of 10 arc, I think.
Yeah. What about you, Steve?
Yeah, I'd give it a 9 out of 10.
Which I guess would kind of lead us into what this arc meant for the story of One Piece as a whole. I mean, well, we've kind of already gone over that. So,
well, I think there's one thing we haven't gotten over, and, like, the aftermath of the thing, which reveals that Luffy is now one of the 4 emperors.
Yeah, that's kind of where I was going at with this. So, I mean, the Straw Hats were already put on a pedestal already, but I think this pushes it into overdrive mode, without a doubt. Because now Luffy has marked his spot on one of the islands, which is Wano, and like you said, now he's like one of the 4 emperors. So,
yeah, in many ways, it's kind of like how after like the Thriller Bark or the CP9 saga, where Luffy became arguably one of the big time rookies amongst with like these other supernovas. Though granted, there was no build up towards that. We've known at least that about the 4 emperors, and those are the pirates you need to beat before becoming Pirate King.
Mm-hmm.
And now that Luffy's become one, you actually know that Luffy is one of those top dog pirates. He's one of the 4 best pirates of the world. Now, granted, there was a bit of depending on what it was, you might have the announcement of the 4 emperors did have some controversy depending on who you think else should have been the 4th emperor. Which, on one hand, I kind of suspected or kind of did not, but it ended up being, of course, the other one being Buggy the Clown.
He's not having an easy life.
Yeah. I mean, but it's like, but then again, Oda did sort of foreshadow this with like the One Piece cover for Volume 25. Oh my
God. Yeah, when that volume cover came out, I was like, wait a second, I've seen that volume cover somewhere before, and I was like looking back, I was like, isn't that the volume cover for?
Yeah. To be honest, LuckyRave, if you were on Twitter, you would have seen a lot of people say, some people like, who's the next 4 emperors? And you have quite a few pointing at this volume cover of like Buggy being the 4th emperor.
Yeah, that's again like that's actually one of like I think Oda's strong suits as like a writer and like an artist. Like you would look at it and be like, okay, that's a pretty cool cover, but then like when you think about the grand scope of the story and you think where it's at, it's like actually that's genius. Like you wouldn't really even pick up on it until like you'll reach to that certain point, you know?
But yeah, but it's like, I think it was arguably also due to the fact that Oda has a sort of like very good writing with like gag characters. You can just kind of believe that Buggy could get this position accidentally.
Mm-hmm.
In many ways, if you had a definition for fake it till you make it, you can use Buggy as the best example of that.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Stampede already kind of laid out the foundation for that, too.
Yeah. He just seems to be at the right place at the right time to get the credit. Even if he doesn't do anything, but yeah. But you pretty much got Luffy as an emperor, so arguably it's a step up with the, like, from the supernovas. But of course, this time, there's no mistakes, but you also got, like, all the stuff after at the end of, like, when you learn stuff happened with Reverie, like Vivi going missing, and Sabo's now considered a sort of emperor of himself as being a flame emperor for supposedly killing Cobra. And also the fact that now you're starting to see some of the big characters make their moves, like Shanks saying he's going for the One Piece. I don't think anyone...
That was one hell of an entrance, by the way, when he just showed up at the end. Mm-hmm. I remember reading that and I was like, dude.
Let's see. And also, you got, like, Sakazuki saying, like, I've had enough of these pirates making a mess. It's time I take action and all that stuff.
Also, if you notice in that page, you'll see Uta for, like, a very small, like, snippet.
Yeah.
Very small. Now,
arguably the film One Piece Red is not canon, but it does have some canon material.
Yeah, so okay, spoilers for film Red if you haven't seen it yet. Uta's like gone in the movie. Now, is she gone in the manga? We don't know.
But yeah, I mean, arguably, if Oda edited some things about with film Red, let's see, that fit more like between Wano and Egghead, arguably you could have made that movie canon.
Mm-hmm.
But due to the fact that you've got most of the stuff with the Big Mom pirates there, and Big Mom's gone after Wano, you can't really claim it to be canon.
No, I mean, okay, if there were canon bits, if there were bits in the movie I would take as canon, I'd probably say her connection to Luffy. And
yeah. And the possible Shanks connection with the Figarland family.
Yeah, that's mainly it.
But yeah, pretty much Wano was pretty much the confirmation of like the conflict Luffy had been building up with 2 emperors mashed into one. Granted, you had Kid and Law take out Big Mom, but still. But you had it all culminate to this and him finally becoming an emperor. So yeah, and with the revolutionary armies declaring war on the world nobles, arguably the final war that Oda has talked about is either starting to happen or is already happening now.
Yeah, we're at least getting there.
I'm sorry, what?
I said we're at least getting there.
Yeah, or at least it's building up to it, or at least, but yeah. And that's arguably what probably might happen with Egghead when you want to talk about that, unless there's anything else that you want to talk about the impact this thing has.
No, I think that's pretty much it. I mean, what about you, Steve? Do you feel like there's any more impact that you feel like Wano's done, or do you feel like we've kind of just talked about it?
We've talked about it at length already.
So I guess I could lead us to our final topic, which is where the manga currently at with Egghead. Now, we're not going to go into super in-depth with the Egghead arc, because, it's still ongoing. Though, this is going to tie back into Reverie in a little way. Because the stuff that we didn't really get to see that was kind of ended abruptly in Reverie, we're kind of getting that now. And it's interesting. I will definitely say that. That is what. But, I mean, okay, if I were to tease something with Egghead, the whole revelation, the Nefertari family also being connected to the Will of D is not something I was expecting, but...
Sort of ties back with, when the fact that we were introduced to the poneglyphs within Alabaster Arc, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess it's the perfect way to set up Vivi having a role with the Straw Hats, and since Yamato isn't joining the crew right now, it seems like implies that, okay, Vivi's going to be rejoining the crew as the 11th Straw Hat.
And that's going to be exciting. You know what I'm also going to be kind of excited for? The whole interaction between her and Robin again.
Yeah, it'll be interesting, but it's like if Kara, who's becoming the leader of the Minks now, is going to become that, and Yamato staying behind Wano, it's like, who else could possibly join that's at least established character? It would have to be her. Now, arguably, I've heard some talks that maybe Bonnie could potentially join the crew, who's the now so supernova that is that's interacting with Luffy on Egghead. But yeah, but I think it's very likely to be more Vivi.
Yeah, I would say so too.
But yeah, but I'll definitely say this in terms of Egghead. I will say, no offense to Wano, but I'd definitely say the quality and the stuff that we're getting out from Egghead feels like it just trumps a lot of what happened in Wano. So
far, anyway. So far, it's doing that. Now,
yeah.
Where we are by the end of Egghead, we'll see.
Yeah, I know. But I feel like, in terms of, the hype, I feel like Egghead is arguably probably the closest that has ever gotten to Marineford.
You're right.
Especially with, the One Piece community and all that stuff. In many ways, Egghead's also, like an arc that's very different from the other ones in terms of the terms of its world building and its plot line things. I mean, it's still like the Straw Hats visiting another island, but what you kind of saw with the in between acts of Act 1 and Act 2 and 3. It feels like you've got a lot more of that, but more heavily focused, especially where we left off with the break before Oda had his eye surgery.
Yeah, which, by the way, in case anyone's out of the loop on that, we're not getting the manga again until July 19th or 17th. No, if Manga Plus is as reliable as it's telling me, July 7th.
But yeah, I definitely say Egghead, as many ways, helped also stack up the hype or the threat that the world government truly is, because I think after Wano, when Wano was going on, the world government and the Marines looked kind of, I suppose, weak with how the build up with the Beast Pirates were. But with Wano, but after Wano, you've just gotten a glimpse. You've just actually now got a full-on glimpse of the actual power scaling of the world government. Yeah,
before it was more you saw them you were kind of what are these guys really gonna do? And then it's now we're kind of getting into that, which I think is
Now, arguably one of their groups sort of came out of nowhere. Granted, it was mentioned briefly in Wano when it revealed what happened to Vivi, Sabo, and Cobra. let's see. Though granted, you didn't have an idea about how strong this group was, but it's only until like Dragon talks about them you kind of get the threat that they might actually be. And also, you finally learn what is it that they use to replace the warlords. But it also, funny enough, actually ties into a character that was introduced in this arc that Zoro fought, which was, of course, King. Which I think is probably another thing that this arc had an impact. It's introduced like this new race that seems to be stronger than all the other ones, at least in terms of biologically, the Lunarian race. Mm-hmm. And due to that sort of mystery of like the Void Century of them, I sort of build up a new way to like, okay, how can you create a Britzy opponents that might be more stronger and Kaido endurance? Mm. But yeah. That's getting too much into spoilers.
Oh yeah. Well, like I said, guys, this is all just a tease for what's to come.
I know. What do you think of Egghead so far, Steve?
In your opinion?
I'd say so far, especially on the cliffhanger we left off on, it's shaping up to be a pretty decent arc. The one thing I'm not happy with, and I guess we can discuss this more in detail in private later, but another character's supposed death has been undone, and this is slowly starting to become a recurring problem. Like, it's One Piece, you know, the thing that set One Piece apart from the other manga, like Bleach, Naruto, or Dragon Ball, is once a character is dead, they tended to stay dead.
Yeah, like they're just dead.
Now, Sabo, we can argue, yeah, they never found the body, so it was wrong of them to think that he was dead all that time, and him coming back was a treat. But, it's... I mean, you're undoing character motivations here, Oda. But we'll get into that, you know, whenever we discuss the Egghead arc.
Yeah. Arguably, it's from what I've seen, that's been the only criticism of the Egghead arc so far. At least anyone that's major.
And, like, so far, like, we're still just getting into things, I feel. With Egghead.
But yeah, that's all I have to say on Egghead for now.
How long do you guys think Egghead's gonna last? Do you think it's gonna be like another 2 years?
I don't think Egghead... Well, Egghead turns out to be longer than expected. I don't think it's going to be a mega arc. I think it'll probably end at least this year or the beginning of next year. I mean, the 5-week break, that might have affected the publication length for One Piece, but I feel like Oda's just got to wrap up what's currently going on, and then let's see with the ongoing plotline with like Egghead now before preparing for like the big incident that's going to shock the world.
Yeah, like right now I'm looking at it, and so far we've only got 30 chapters. So if I were to take an estimate guess, maybe another 20, 30 chapters.
I'd definitely say let's see, at least 50 to 60.
Yeah, like it's gonna be at least under 100. I don't think.
No, of course. Let's see, but yeah, I definitely say like probably with like what's going on currently could probably be wrapped up in like at least probably 5 chapters at least.
Yeah.
Let's see with like the current thing, and then the incident itself could probably be about 15 to 20 chapters.
Yeah.
But yeah, it also depends on whether or not certain characters I think are going to show up or not, because this incident kind of makes me think of what was hyped up at the end of Dressrosa. But yeah, let's see. But I'm not going to spoil it. But if you recall Dressrosa, you might know what I'm referring to.
Yeah, I'd say Egghead might last at the very least, another 2 years. I don't see it though going beyond that.
But yeah, because for the very least, we know that we've got to go to Elbaf, Raftail, and Rijua afterwards.
I'm expecting Elbaf to be at least the next like big mega arc. I would say.
But yeah, we've got at least 3 more islands, at least guaranteed to go to next.
Mm-hmm.
Whether or not there's going to be 1 or 2 islands where we have a little break first, but who knows? But arguably, those are the 3 islands that the Straw Hats probably need to go to.
Yep, it's going to be interesting. I'm not going to lie, it's going to be really, really interesting to see where it goes. And I'll end it off by saying this. When One Piece comes back, you'll see me start doing chapter analysis breakdowns. Kind of like what I do with the other manga series that I read. So
okay.
It's going to be fun.
Alright, I'll look forward to hearing what you have to say.
I mean, I know I've said that in the past. Like, I did that, like, when Whole Cake went on for a little bit, and I took a break, and then I kind of did that again during Reverie. But this time I do actually mean it, because, like, we are in the final saga now. So at this point, it's like Oda said, it's like, you're going full steam ahead. There's no stopping. I mean, it's like what Blue said. There's Elbaf, there's Marijois, and then there's Laugh Tale. Which...
Yep.
Granted, there's been some debate on whether Marijois or Laugh Tale comes first, but yeah. But arguably, we are in the final saga, pretty much. And in many ways, it's building up to hype for like many characters we've waited a long time to see.
Right.
But of course, we'll wait until we get to the actual podcast for that to talk about.
And like I said, guys, we're only just getting started. So, Oda's got some surprises in store, and I can't wait to see what it's going to be.
Yeah. Now, granted, there's also still quite a lot of Wano we could cover, but I think that could also be for other podcasts or general discussions.
Oh, yeah.
On certain things, like, arguably, you could do a podcast on best fights in Wano, rank all the fights that took place.
Yeah, that could be something. We'll see.
All
depends on what comes in the future. But for the time being, you guys, I think that's pretty much it when it comes to this One Piece podcast for the Wano arc. And I gotta say, it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun, just having Steve here, having Blue Star here. I do kind of miss having the other guys too, because it would be kind of fun having them. But that would also warrant at least another hour's worth of topic to talk about.
Yep.
Admittedly. But also for Steve, like, it was also great having you on for the first time too for a One Piece podcast.
Glad to be here.
Thank you for also having me again, Lucky Chi.
Of course. And I can't wait to have you guys again whenever, either when the Egghead arc hits, or like when it's complete, or who knows? We might talk about Film Red at some point.
Or even maybe the Wano anime arc.
Is that still ongoing?
The anime is still ongoing, yes, but it's close to the big finale and all that stuff. I mean, I think at some point in July we're going to get Gear 5th or August.
Okay.
Also, arguably, you could also talk about the live-action One Piece show, because that's coming out in August.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Oh, yeah. I'll be definitely watching that when that drops.
Oh, yeah. Tease for the future, guys. It's a tease for the future. And with that being said, guys, that's pretty much it. I'm Lucky Cheese 7.
I'm BlueStarSaber.
I'm lkmnjh, also known as Steve.
And we will catch you guys next time. Peace.